It was a quiet evening, the kind where the air feels thick with comfort and routine. I had just finished my dinner, sitting in my favorite armchair by the window, sipping on a cup of steaming tea. The soft hum of the ceiling fan mixed with the faint ticking of the clock created a rhythm I had grown to love over the years. Everything seemed ordinary, until my son walked in with a proud grin on his face, holding a small envelope. "Mom, this is for you," he said, handing it over. I raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. He had always been thoughtful, but I knew my son well enough to sense that something was amiss. The envelope was unusually thick, and the weight of it hinted at something significant inside. I took it, feeling a strange mix of excitement and suspicion. Slowly I opened it and my eyes widened. Inside was a folded piece of paper with my card pin written neatly on it. For a moment I didn't react. I only smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that hid 1,000 thoughts. "You gave them my pin?" I asked, my voice calm but steady. "Yes, Mom," he said almost proudly. "I thought it would make things easier for her. You know, bills, shopping, emergencies." His words tumbled out, justified yet careless. I leaned back, letting the smile linger. "I see," I said softly. It was then that I realized they didn't understand me at all. They didn't know who I really was. They assumed I was just another doting parent, oblivious and trusting. Little did they know, I had spent decades learning how to read people, how to handle situations like this without revealing my hand too soon. I didn't scold. I didn't shout. Instead, I let them believe they had the upper hand. Later that night, when the house had quieted and the living room lights cast soft shadows across the walls, I called them into the room. My son and his wife entered, cheerful and unsuspecting. "Sit," I said, gesturing to the couch. They complied, eyes curious. I folded my hands and leaned forward, my smile still in place. "I want to show you something," I said. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a small, sleek card, not my bank card, but something far more significant. It was my emergency card, linked not just to my finances, but to every account I had ever owned. Accessing it would require authorization that only I possessed. Their eyes widened, and for the first time I saw hesitation. I let that pause hang in the air, thick and heavy. "You see," I said slowly, "this card doesn't just hold money. It holds power. And power is something you never give away lightly." The next morning I watched them interact as if nothing had happened. But I could see the unease lingering in their glances, subtle but unmistakable. They thought they had done something clever. But I had already turned the tables in my mind. I decided it was time for a lesson, a gentle, unforgettable one. I invited them for breakfast, preparing their favorite dishes, each plate a silent reminder that appearances can be deceiving. As we sat down, I started casually. "You know, giving someone your pin or your trust isn't just about convenience. It's about responsibility, judgment, and understanding the consequences of your actions." My son and his wife exchanged nervous glances. They knew I was serious, but the calmness in my tone unnerved them. "Let me tell you a story," I continued, my eyes locking onto theirs. "Years ago, I trusted someone completely. They promised loyalty, honesty, everything, and I gave them access to things I shouldn't have. Do you know what happened?" They shook their heads, tense. "They betrayed me," I said simply. "Not because they wanted to hurt me, but because they didn't understand the responsibility that came with trust. Giving someone a pin, a key, or even a secret, it's not just an action. It's a statement about who you are, how much you value integrity." I paused, letting my words sink in. The room was silent, the air almost vibrating with anticipation. "You both acted out of convenience," I said, without thinking about the consequences. And yet I didn't react with anger. Why? Because I wanted you to understand, truly understand, what it means to respect someone else's boundaries, to recognize the value of trust before it's too late. Then slowly I pulled out my phone and typed a few numbers. My son froze. His wife's hand trembled slightly. "You see this?" I said, showing them the screen. "I've already monitored every transaction. I know what's happening with every account. And the funny part? Even if you had tried to misuse it, it would have been impossible. Because giving away trust doesn't give you control, it only exposes your intentions." Their eyes met mine, wide and reflective. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that I wasn't just a parent. I was someone who had lived through mistakes, learned from them, and turned wisdom into power. "From now on," I said, folding my hands on the table, "think before you act. Understand what you're holding in your hands, whether it's money, trust, or responsibility. It's not just a pin, it's a reflection of character. And character is everything. Over the next few days, I watched them carefully. My son was quieter, more thoughtful. His wife, usually cheerful and impulsive, now approached tasks with caution. I knew the lesson had taken root. One evening, I decided it was time for the final act. Not of anger, but of revelation. I called them into the living room, this time with a small box in my hands. "I want to show you who I am," I said, my voice calm but firm. I opened the box to reveal a collection of old journals, documents, and photographs. Each piece told a story of my life, my struggles, my achievements, the people I had trusted, and the lessons I had learned. "This," I said, lifting one of the journals, "is a record of every decision I've made, every mistake, every triumph. I've lived long enough to know the value of responsibility, the weight of trust, and the cost of carelessness." I let them absorb it. The room was silent, filled only with the soft rustle of pages. "You thought giving away a pin was harmless," I said, looking at my son, then his wife. "But life is not about shortcuts. Life is about understanding the weight of every choice. And today I've shown you who I am. Not to scare you, not to punish you, but to teach you." Tears welled up in my son's eyes. His wife reached out and held my hand. They understood. They finally saw that I wasn't just a parent with rules. I was a guardian of principles, a keeper of wisdom earned through years of experience. That night, as they left my house, I watched them walk away carrying a new understanding. I didn't need to lecture them further. The lesson had been planted and it would grow. And as I sat back in my chair sipping my tea, I smiled again, not just for the pin, not just for the lesson, but for the moment of revelation. Because sometimes showing someone who you really are doesn't require words. Sometimes it only requires patience, observation, and the quiet power of being one step ahead. And in that moment I knew they would never underestimate me again.